most affected by the hurricane. And so I immediately sent that to another friend of mine in Cuba. And she said that she was going out to talk to her neighbors, and they were all going to start raising food. Cuba Debate also publishes, this is again on Telegram, the letter that some of you may have seen that was published in the New York Times today, which was initiated by the People's Forum. Have people seen that? It says, President Biden, you have exactly 90 days to reverse Trump's brutal policy on Cuba. So now we are at 8:32 and we're up to 211 people. So what do you think, Tony? Should we get started?
Yes, I think so.
Has the ambassador been able to join us yet?
The ambassador is with us, yes.
Yes,
Good.
I'm here.
Oh, well, good evening to you.
Thank
So
you.
can you pin Tony as well? Good.
There you are.
So before I introduce our dear ambassador, I want to welcome everyone. 376 people signed up and 219 so far have 220 have signed on. And I want to first of all thank Bob Schwartz of Global Health Partners, Cheryl Labash of the NNOC, and Vicki Gass of the Latin American Working Group for helping to pull this meeting together on such short notice. I mean, 2 days, my goodness. I also want to thank MAPA staff, and especially Brian Garvey, our executive director, for stepping in to support Tony and me and all of us to set up this webinar. Brian is actually executive director. And I do want to thank the Cuban Embassy and Ambassador Torres for agreeing also in short notice to brief us in the extraordinary situation, or really two situations that have struck Cuba, which most of you know, and she will explain. It is extraordinary that on such short notice, almost 400 people responded to the call for this summit, and many of them are here tonight. Tonight is about building community. That's what this is about. In the face of crisis in a country that we all love and respect. We won't have answers or solutions tonight, but we will learn as much as we can about the situation and then join with each other to build our response. In this, we're quite lucky, which is there are about 20 or 30 organizations that people on this call belong to. So we're not starting from scratch, that's for sure. And our response will include both ramped up advocacy and protests to get our government's boot off Cuba's neck and humanitarian relief to help alleviate the immediate hardship people in Cuba are facing. I mean, imagine, without refrigeration, the food spoiled. In both of these, I'm sure we will be joined by people around the globe who also love and respect Cuba. We've all seen, I think, notices from different countries that that's already happening. I want to just say that we won't have answers tonight. We really won't have answers tonight. We want to do humanitarian aid, but we still have to set that up. And there's some very promising things in the works. We'll have time sometime tonight to generate ideas. But mostly, I want us to think of ourselves as a community that's come together to solve this problem together. And it's going to take us some time. And we will follow up with you. In MAPA, we always send a follow-up with the recording of this message and then some ideas, which will be links to the existing organizations and some actual plans and suggestions that we can go forward with. So thank you for coming. Tony, do you want to add anything before I introduce the ambassador?
I'm just pleased to see everyone on. I think it's critically important. I'm glad to hear that they've been able to get some of the electricity on in Cuba, but Cuba is still in a very dire straits, and that it's a responsibility to stand with Cuba and to support Cuba as much as we can. And so I'm, here to also hear what the ambassador briefing can say and how we can move forward and helping Cuba out during this crisis.
Thank you, Tony. It is now my really great pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Ambassador Leonis Torres Rivera. Ambassador Torres is the first woman to lead Cuba's mission in Washington. She's been a diplomat since 1994 and previously served as Cuba's ambassador to Vietnam. From 2015 to 2017, she was part of the Cuban delegation that met with U.S. government authorities to discuss the reestablishment of diplomatic relations and the reopening of embassies in both countries. And we're sure that she's going to be able to do that again very soon. She was also part of the Cuba-U.S. Bilateral Commission, the Cuba-U.S. Bilateral Economic Dialogue, and other Cuba-U.S. bilateral dialogues on regulatory issues, human rights, trafficking in persons, the establishment of direct postal services, renewable energy, and banking issues. Ambassador Torres will brief us on the situation for about 20 minutes or however long she wants. We will then pose questions to her that you would put in the chat. So put your questions in the chat. And if you can put questions, not comments, in the chat, it'll be easier for us to find them. And so we won't miss any of your questions. And we'll get to as many as we can. After that, we will spend whatever time we have listening to each other as we brainstorm about what we can do. Tony and I will call on people, and we will also cut you off after 2 minutes, mercilessly, so more people have a chance to speak. So, Brian, please unpin Tony and me and pin our wonderful Ambassador Torres.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mary, for that long introduction. And good evening, dear friends. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk to you in one of the most difficult moments in which Cuba is going through. Your solidarity and support give Cuba hope and strength to keep fighting for a better future between the people of Cuba and the US. Regardless of what the media is saying these days, our national, as Mary was saying, our national electric system is totally connected since this afternoon. And the eastern part of the country is also starting the recovering from Hurricane Oscar. Unfortunately, 7 fellow Cubans died. Our thoughts are now with their relatives. As for material damage, it will take us some time to determine the amount of that. You know, there are still areas totally flooded, so we have to see. Tonight, I'd like to give you some information about what happened with the power grid in Cuba. This is a very technical issue, but I'll try to do my best. The more than 6 decades of unlawful unilateral coercive measures from the US has had a toll in the capability of our government to renew our power generating facilities. But it also has curtailed and slowed down the possibility to purchase new renewable and eco-friendly power generating technologies. So Cuba has to rely highly on fossil fuel that we have to import. That means that our power grid works with several thermoelectric power plants that are responsible for generating the core electricity of the whole country. When the electric grid is stable, the country has the possibility to cover the power demand of the whole country. When core power generation is unstable, it can collapse, which is what happened last Friday. The electricity generation has to be equal to the demand at every moment. And we all know that the electricity generated cannot be stored in a warehouse, waiting to be demanded. So it is necessary to generate at every second what is demanded. This is called power balance, and this is something that, to be honest with you, we learn these days. When this balance cannot be achieved for whatever reason, a very dangerous instability problem happens that triggers the system to rapidly collapse without any human action being able to prevent it. The total restoration of a whole national electric system takes many days because electricity is needed to generate electricity. And in the case of Cuba, with no neighbors on the border who could supply us with electricity, we have to start with small microsystems that are synchronized with each other through the networks to give them the necessary power. An isolated microsystem is very vulnerable, and any event, even small, for instance, an increase in the demand, short circuit, and in the network or others can make it to collapse. And then we have to start all over again. In other words, the solution that we took was to divide the island's electric system into subsystems, Western, Central, and Eastern, to more efficiently manage the restoration of power in each zone. However, this approach also presented challenges, as each subsystem depends on the limited capacity of local generating units and the successful synchronization of this to ensure service stability. The goal was to reconnect these subsystems, but the complexity of the operation and technical limitation had to be done on a gradual basis. But the greatest challenge will be for us from now on, and has been also, to transform our national electric system into a more resilient and modern one. This requires, as you can imagine, enormous resources that the country does not have access to today. It is clear that one of the main reasons why our power grid collapsed last Friday was because there was not enough fuel available to keep the power balance stable. This is directly linked to the US persecution of international companies that sell and transport fuel to Cuba. And I just want to give you a quick example. Between April and December 2019, 53 vessels and 27 companies from Venezuela, Liberia, Greece, Panama, and Cyprus involved in this operation with Cuba were sanctioned by OFAC. Due to this, buying oil for Cuba, it is a very difficult process, requiring purchase in faraway markets and at very high prices. It could be easier for us to buy in nearby markets or to have access to credits to buy oil more quickly and cheaper. But once again, the blockade and Cuba's inclusion in the SSOT list prevent us from doing this. On this occasion, it must be taken into account also that the bad weather that hit the east part of the country prevented the timely transfer of ships with fuel to the electricity generating plants, causing a greater fuel shortage. I want to emphasize, and I think it's important, that another key factor is, as I have already mentioned, the aging of the equipment of our national electrical system, which is not because we prefer it that way. To understand this, it's necessary to know the scope of the block. To understand this, it's necessary to know the scope of the blockade against Cuba. The maintenance of a generating plant is pretty expensive. we need big amounts of foreign currency to do it. And it's difficult for our country since the blockade deprives us of access to credit. On the other hand, many of the necessary equipment has, on one way or the other, US components, making it impossible for Cuba to buy them, since we cannot buy anything, not even this pen, if it has more than 10% of US components. This causes unwanted blackouts for all Cubans. In some moments, we even have to stop for certain periods industries in the country to guarantee the electric service to the population, to our hospitals, and other essential services and institutions. In the last 4 days, all the factors that I just previously explained, simply came together with the hurricane, with Oscar. Everything except for the latter is caused by the US blockade and our country designation of the in the SSOT list. We have to say that the current situation in Cuba is being heavily manipulated for all those who want to see our country surrender. That is why you see an escalation of misinformation about the situation in Cuba. You see millions of US dollars continue being allocated in several budget bills that are being discussed in Congress for regime change program, for example, to destroy a revolution, to destroy our country. I have to say, to those who amplify the idea of the ineptitude or professional incompetence of our leaders or workers of the Cuban national electric system, without knowing nothing of this that I've been explaining, I say that they are wrong. Some do it out of ignorance, but others do it with cruelty and contempt towards our electrical workers and our population, who are the ones who are suffering from this cruel policy. And then last but not least, I want to thank all of you, friends of Cuba, and every American that have demanded the lifting of the blockade and the exclusion of our country from the SSOT list. I have to say that we will continue to resist and overcome from this difficult situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very, very much. I myself have been following this on Cuba Debate and Telegram, and I never understood exactly until you explained it. So that was very good. So now we'd like to take questions, if you don't mind, Ambassador Torres, and people should put these in the chat. And Tony and I will then pose the questions for you. This is just the most efficient way to do it. So Brian, can you unpause the chat and then people can put their questions? And Tony, can you help and sort through them? Maybe you could put Tony up as well. Jeff Sale. Oh, good to see you, Jeff. I'm so glad you're here. Does Cuba want or need international assistance in response to the immediate crisis? Jeff asks. Jeff Sale, by the way, is the former director of the Washington office in Latin America.
Well, there are, as you have read in the news, there has been countries like Mexico, like Colombia, Venezuela, like Russia, that has already reached Cuba to offer assistance. I don't have further information on this, but most of you know Cubans. We are people were raised and that are raised in solidarity with solidarity values. And when someone is in need, even if it's not our friend, we go and offer help. We don't wait for them to help, to ask for help or demand help. And this is what has been done. I don't have other details on this, but other than the one that I mentioned before.
Ambassador, Sarah is asking a question in regards to tourism, and is that becoming a burden? And she'll what and want to know about people traveling to Cuba.
Well, you mean a burden, this situation?
Well, yes, that might be putting more pressure on the resources. They want to know the question about continuing tourism in terms of people coming to Cuba is the question, I would say.
Yeah, well, to speak about this last 4 days, the airport has been open, operating normally in Cuba, and the same with the hospitals and some specific places. Most of the hotel has a generating power plant. But as for the rest of the tourism, I mean, its development, we have to say that tourism is one of the main sources of income for Cuba. And since we are in the list of state-sponsored terrorism, it is a problem for Europeans to travel to Cuba, because once that they do it, they have to apply for they cannot apply for the ESTA visa program. They have to go and ask for a normal appointment at any embassy of the US in Europe, which take time, and it's a problem for them to travel to Cuba. And then what is happening is that more than 300,000 Europeans has lost their ESTA program due to this. And governments from Europe has been demanding the US to exclude Cuba or find a solution on this issue, because it's something that is affecting their citizens. Because Europeans like to go to Cuba. They feel that Cuba is a safe and secure country, a welcoming country, and they have a tradition of traveling to Cuba, and they cannot do it freely now, as I said before. So in a way, or not in a way, but there's a direct impact in the tourist sector in Cuba, and because of that, in our income and in our capacity to have access to, as I said before, to have access to foreign currency because of the sanctions, but because of the list of state-sponsored terrorism.
Mm-hmm. And I think more importantly, what can organizations do now to assist Cuba in terms of this emergency, but also in terms of the ongoing policies that the U.S. has imposed on Cuba?
Well, Cuba always deeply value the solidarity that you people have always give us in situations like this or in normal times. What to do? I mean, I won't I won't tell you, and we will never do that, because this is something that you have to talk between you and among you. But Cuba value any help that you could give us, and will be really appreciated. But as I said, it's up to you to decide what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of people have posed questions in the chat and also to me before we started. about the possibility of solar power in Cuba. I know that there's some, and the questions are two. And I also saw that the Minister of Mines and Energy had been speaking about solar power. So the question is, in terms of large-scale solar power installation and small-scale and individual, what is the thinking about that and the possibilities about that?
Well, Maria, you were saying that there's a big one, a massive project to have in Cuba in 2 years, certain amount of, I think it's almost 2,000 2,000 kilowatts, I think, of solar panel. This is something that it takes time, because you have to build the facility to install the solar panels. It will take sometimes, I think for next year, we will have by the first semester of next year, we will have installed around 500 megawatt, and in a period of 2 years, it will reach 2,000 megawatts, which is a great news for Cuba. But it takes time, and it has been difficult to have access to the technology and to have access to everything related to this progress, to this project due to the sanctions. But we are already there.
So what about individual solar installations? I thought I saw that there was encouragement to be importing them, and then somebody else said that they thought that it was illegal for individuals to import solar panels. What's the story about individuals installing solar?
Well, we have to, I have seen people in Cuba that, to be honest with you, that have installed them. I don't think it's prohibited. We can check. We have people here from the embassy watching this event that could check in the custom regulations. But as I said, I have seen people importing them legally, but this is costly. I mean, not everyone in Cuba have access to that as individuals. So that's why I'm talking about this. I was speaking to several colleagues around here, and not from the embassy, and they were saying, but why there are countries in Latin America that don't have a robust, we could say, an national electric system, but people has individual generators at home and all that. In Cuba, you can import them, but not everyone has the possibility to do it. So as for many things and many areas in the country, we are betting for an electric system that offers the possibility to everyone in the country to have it, and to have, I mean, at home and in their work and etc. So it's a different situation. As for solar panels, we have to find out. But as I said, I have seen people importing them legally. But we have to check, and this is something that we can. And David is already answering that it is permitted.
So the question is, someone is asking in terms of the fact that it's an aging system, do you anticipate, maybe additional problems with the system, and what impact is that having in terms of providing water, and is that something that's also needed?
Well, we already reconnect the whole electric system, but it doesn't mean that all the problems are solved, because because we still have a problem with our capacity of generating all the demand that is needed in Cuba. and problems can come again, but we have to wait. According to the official information that we have been seeing, we are now in better position if you compare to last Thursday, for example, in terms of the availability of fuel. So that's a good news, but you never know. When this fuel is finished, we need more. And then we go to the same process, how to buy it without the persecution of the US government of every shipment that goes to Cuba. And then you have to still fight with the Asian power plants that need spare parts, that needs major repairing, and we need for that money, and we need for that the spare parts. So everything goes to the same place.
Is there any, so when people travel to Cuba, people are asking, what kind of things can they bring? For individuals who are traveling, what kind of things can they bring?
Well, you have to, in personal suitcases, you have to, I mean, what is normal allowed for the country. As for donations and all that, for those who has been traveling to Cuba for years, they know there's a procedure to do it. We can help you with that. You can reach us and we can explain how to do it legally and in an organized way for you to avoid troubles with the custom, because some people think, no, but I want to bring this and this and this to Cuba. When you arrive in Cuba, to be honest with you, the person that is there in the custom don't know you. And for years, we have been people trying to introduce in our country things that they say is for good purposes, and they're not. So that's why we are, that's why you have to fulfill the procedure, and everything will go smoothly.
So two related questions, or I'm going to relate them. There's been a question here from Isaac Sani, and it says, given Barbados Prime Minister Mayor Motley's declaration this weekend of mobilizing concrete support for Cuba, what immediate support can CARICOM? But let me phrase it a different way. Are there discussions with CARICOM about support to Cuba in the current situation, and with what other countries are there? And then the related question is, President Diaz-Canel announced that he would not go, though the foreign minister would go to the BRICS. But between BRICS and CARICOM, what support for Cuba do you think could be expected now? Is there any discussion currently?
Mary, I don't have information on this. I don't have any information other than what has been said publicly. I know that our foreign minister went to is now on this summit, BRICS summit. And as you know, we presented some time ago a request to be a partner of BRICS, but other than that, I don't have further information. BRICS is an important group with, I think, for the balance of the world economy, and also the international policy. But other than that, I don't have further information.
Well, here's actually an answer, not to that, but to another question that people asked. Secretary David Ramirez of the embassy replies to the question about solar. Yes, Cuba allows the importation of solar panels for non-commercial purposes by natural persons, meaning residents of Cuba. Resolution 206/2021 of the Ministry of Energy and Mines, published in Official Gazette number 67 extraordinary, allows the import of photovoltaic systems without limit in quantity and without customs duties. So there you have it.
Thank you, David.
So the question is anything set up to facilitate that, that process in terms of building that, and how, and who can we work with here to do that?
Well, this is something new. It happens on Friday. You have a weekend in the middle. Today is Tuesday. Cuba is still, everyone in Cuba was working during the weekend and until today, and we will continue. As you saw, people, our children are at home. There's no classes in Cuba. In term or of workplaces, only the indispensables are working there. But so we have to wait to see how to organize all this. You can be in touch with the embassy, and we could provide information about it. But essentially, we have, for example, that I saw in the chat that someone was asking about how to send money and all that. We used to have, and I think we still have it. We can find out if it is available for this situation. An account in Cuba where people in past events like this, not like this one, but similar, could send money to Cuba. We could find out, but as I said, everyone now is focused on restoring the power grid, and now in the recovering of the eastern part of Cuba, especially Guantanamo. So we'll have to wait a couple of days probably to see you in case of those who want to send money, in case of the people that wants to send goods and all that. We can help you with that information. But now, as I said, we have to wait.
Mm-hmm. So the
So here's a question, Tony, I'm sorry.
Yes.
There's a number of Cuban Americans who have joined this call this evening, I'm very glad to say. And Fernando Viart asks the following. I think only part of this will be able to be answered here, and some of it I think probably will want to connect him with you at the embassy. We know that Cuba has been making changes in laws and regulations, but it's not enough to facilitate the engagement of Cuban American businesses with new Cuban business in the island. In this new energy situation in Cuba, would the government be interested in meeting with a delegation of Cuban American business owners and professionals to discuss the adaptation of the actual law for the private sector that will allow for a direct commercial relation between business and both sides? As I say, I want to announce this question because I think it's a serious question. But I think, Fernando, we're going to do best connecting you, and we have your email, to people at the embassy. I might be right in that, I might be wrong, Ambassador.
Well, of course, he can be in touch with us, and we can give him more information. But Cuban Americans can, as anyone outside Cuba, can invest in Cuba, and if he is interested, we can be in further conversation with him, with Fernando. David is here from the embassy. He can introduce you to the official at the embassy that is in charge of this issue, and as I said, could give you more information about it.
Ambassador, you mentioned the difficulties in Guantanamo, so we can check in with the embassy to figure out ways to try to give allowable material things to go to Guantanamo?
You know, it's early to have an exact idea of the damages there. What I saw, as you did in the media, in our media, is houses and towns, especially sometimes in Mias and San Antonio, that were floated in areas
Yes.
that have never seen something like this. So we have to think that they will have enormous damages in houses, people that probably have lost everything in their house, everything. I mean, household appliances, clothes, and food, and everything. We have to wait and see, because it was difficult in the morning, according to our news, even to reach by bus or by car or anything some of these areas. So we have to wait to have an assessment of the damage in the area. But as I said, people are talking about enormous damages. So
There's a possibility of needing a lot of solidarity and support once we can make an assessment as to what's needed.
yeah, we'll have to see, but the pictures are impressive, are shocking.
And just a personal note here. My daughter's name is Ines.
Wow. And it's from that municipality? For sure.
No, but her name is Ines.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to say to people that a number of people have put in notes, websites, notes, organizations that can be joined, projects that can be joined, and so forth and so on. And I want to assure everybody that you don't have to scramble to write everything down. We will include all of those in our follow-up with you. And we will also be including a video of this presentation and of this meeting, and it'll also be on YouTube. So,
excuse me, I also heard, how are things in Baracoa?
Well, Baracoa is suffering from this Oscar hurricane as well, with flooding and damages, and it is the same. We have to wait.
Okay.
We really need a couple of days or maybe more to have access, and the right access to these places, and to be able to have an assessment, a precise assessment of what has been damaged and all that. It happened just this weekend. I mean, just Sundays. I mean, and Monday. So today is Tuesday. We need some time.
Okay.
I mean, you have had here in the US 2 hurricanes, and I'm sure you're still assessing the damage, the huge damages. So we need some time.
so Kent Newton asks, is the Cuban military playing a significant role in helping with the current crisis? And David Ramirez answers with a web link. I wonder, David, if you would mind just telling us what that says, because I think the role of the Army, of the military, and of the civil defense is very important always in Cuba in disasters.
Well, you have, I mean, for those who have been following the news, our president thanked the armed forces and the Ministry of Interior for their role in all the works of rescue in those areas that were flooded and heavily affected by the hurricane. So it's on the news already. But usually, people in Cuba feel confident because we know that we are always safe, and that we can always count with the armed forces and the Ministry of Interior, especially in situations, extreme situations like hurricanes and all that, and the civil defense, of course.
Somebody else asked, and this question has come up, and I think people aren't. I think somebody asked, is it helpful to continue delegations to the island? But I think the question is really immediate. And the question is, how soon do you think the island will be ready to receive visitors again in this immediate future?
Well, the island has been receiving visitors even during this extraordinary situation. As I said, I mean, talking about the hotels. I know you're talking about other kinds of delegations, probably, but I mean, the airports were working, the hotels were working, and people continue arriving in the country. As for other delegations like Solidarity and all that, well, I ask you to be kindly ask you to be patient, because we need time to adjust and recover ourselves. As you read in the news, people who will come back, we will go back to their workplaces this coming Thursday, this week. So they need to see what they have there and organize themselves. So it will take some time. But for those kind of things, as I said before, as for donation and all that, you can be in contact with our embassy, and we will help you with information on how to organize yourself and ourselves in an efficient way. We are now, I mean, the whole system was reconnected, as I said, as Mary was saying, and as I said before, just this afternoon, after 4 days. So a whole country, so we need time to, and then we are coping with this hurricane. So we need time to adjust ourselves and organize.
So there's a lot of comments in the chat, but I don't know that we've missed any of the actual questions. So, but I do want to read this comment. Thank you, Ambassador. We in Florida, this is from Russell Meyer. We in Florida have major challenges ahead of us recovering from Debbie, Helene, and Milton. These storms affected 1/3 of the population. The difference is that we have access to resources that are denied to Cuba. In solidarity with your suffering, we look for how we can assist you, especially now in these dire times.
I ask you to be, as I said, Mary and friends, to be in contact with the embassy. Also, you can be in contact with all who have a direct link with ECAP in Cuba to see how you can, I mean, in case you want to do it, help or anything. So let us know, and we will try to organize.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I realize that we've gone way over the time that we were going to. And we only have 10 more minutes for actual discussion. But there is a lot of discussion in that chat, and that we will pass along. But I want to call on two people in particular that I've asked if they would make comments tonight. And then if we still have some time, we can do some more. Bill Leogrand is here tonight, and I would like to ask him if he would like to say a couple of words on the situation. And also Elena Freire, Cuban American, who's very active in support of all kinds for her original homeland. I would like to ask both of them if they could just make some very short remarks.
Well, I'm happy to start. Glad you could join us, Madam Ambassador, and everyone else who's here this evening. I mean, I think Ambassador Torres has said the most important things, that this situation is significantly affected by the sanctions that the United States has on Cuba, whether it's the global impact of the terrorism list, the travel restrictions that are left over from the Trump administration, the sanctions against oil carriers that make it difficult for Cuba to even find a carrier willing to bring oil to it, and Title III of the Helms-Burton legislation, which discourages any foreign investors from going into Cuba and providing the capital to help restart the economy. This is a moment when the United States could really step up and be a good neighbor by providing some restrictions, relaxation, and providing some direct humanitarian assistance to Cuba. It's been done before. George W. Bush did it, and if George W. Bush could do it, certainly Joe Biden can. Biden administration did provide some assistance to Cuba in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, and in the aftermath of the Matanzas oil depot fire. So it's not an unprecedented thing. It's something that the administration could do tomorrow and could make a difference in easing the hardship that Cubans are facing today, whether it's around the shortages of food and medicine or providing some of the equipment and perhaps technical assistance to stabilize the grid and help to modernize it. And so that's what we ought to be telling our elected representatives, and particularly the Biden White House, they need to do, in not in January, not waiting till January, not even waiting until November 6th, but this is actions that could be taken on a humanitarian level today.
Thank you, Bill. And Elena, would you like to say a couple of words?
I'm muted now. Okay, I was muted. First of all, I would like to thank the ambassador. You must be very busy these days. It's a very difficult situation to make the time to meet with us and to talk to us. There were two things that I wanted to say. First of all, there is a wealth of information online as to how you can help. There are organizations that are already sending aid and that have gone through. Cuba's not going to turn down any well-meaning materials that people in solidarity want to change, but there's a procedure, and I think we need to know that there's a procedure. It isn't a question of, I've seen that question come up a million times. My organization is now finishing up the arrangements to take a huge load of medical supplies to Pinar del Rio. And we had to follow certain procedures. And the reason for this is not because Cuba wants to make it difficult to get what it needs to get. It's because there has to be an order. Otherwise, you have chaos with stuff coming in and nobody knows where it's going or who's going to get it. I mean, I understand that. The other thing is, I put something in the chat. I got a message from the women's organization. They have a list for women specifically that is so easy to take or to send. It's all hygiene stuff. It's all hygiene stuff. You can put together a little package. You can send it. Right now, the most important thing is to step up and be in solidarity with the Cuban people. I tell you, I am not, you know me, you've known me for a very long time. I'm not the kind of person that goes to tears very easily. I lived through what happened at the Saratoga. Last night, I couldn't stop crying because I looked at what was happening to my people and I was enraged. I did a blog and I tried to be very diplomatic. I was enraged because what happened with the grid can be laid at the feet of Joseph Robinette Biden. He is responsible for what happened because what he has done since he took office, I tell people that he's worse than Trump because we knew who Trump was. This guy stood in Miami while I was still in Miami and said, oh, I'm going to change everything. He didn't exactly say I'm going to go back to Obama, but he said, I'm going to roll back all these terrible sanctions that Trump has imposed upon the Cuban people, etc. I went out with signs for Biden in the middle of streets in Miami. I was standing on Bird Road, which is a main thoroughfare, and people were trying to throw stuff at me. People were trying to spit at me, but I thought we can go back to some sort. We're never going to be normal until the blockade is over, but we can go back to
Elena,
some sort of. I know I'm taking. So
Elena,
close to me. I know.
you're wonderful. You're wonderful, and I love
I
you.
know, but thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you, Ambassador, for making the time to be with us.
We have
Mary-
one more minute.
Yes, can we ask Shafia in Bilal, she's in Atlanta now and work for some organizations to say something?
Sure.
Shafia, can you pin Shafia for us, please?
You have to unmute yourself.
You're on mute. Unmute.
It's allowing me to
There you
do
are,
that.
there you are.
Thank you so much. My name is Shafia Mbalia. I'm a retired postal worker, active with Black Workers for Justice. I'm currently in Savannah, Georgia. I also work with political prisoners, and this evening I'm representing an organization called the Communiversity, as well as the Imam Jamil Action Network. And in speaking and putting the word out about this, the disaster and the call tonight, there were many people who wish to express the solidarity. Sister, Madam Ambassador, we thank you for your time this evening. We think that it's incumbent that, you know, Cuba has been anchored solidarity is the model of solidarity around the world. Whether it has been offering doctors during Katrina, which the United States refused, or Angola, or even the Medical School of the Americas, Cuba has always been there. We also recognize the solidarity with the Black Liberation Movement and the Puerto Rican Liberation Movements, and offering the asylum. We don't forget about Asada and other members of our freedom movement, and we salute Cuba for that. Cuba needs us now. And so we think that either a consortium of the solidarity groups that are working together or should work together in the United States, where people can send donations in solidarity with the Cuban people, is of utmost need now. We are calling on all of us to raise money. We would like to make a call for maybe a pot of 250,000. We are sure that, you know, we are looking at disasters here in this country. People are sending clothing and food and shelter around to Florida and North Carolina, and that is very much appreciated and acknowledged. And I think that we have the capacity, you know, even in the time of need in this country. Cuba has nothing. The United States has denied Cuba respite for the entire revolution. And it's time for us to step up and join with the Cuban people and really look at stepping up on, number one, raising money. Number two, a greater level of coordination in a legislative campaign for ending the blockade, calling on Biden and all elected officials to support an ending of the blockade, as well as taking Cuba off of the anti-terrorist list. Those are some specific kinds of goals that we here in the United States can do. And we think that all of the movements whether it is environmental justice, whether it is the liberation movements, whether it is a labor movement. We have the capacity, even in this time of struggle, in potential chaos, that we are facing in this country, in this time of rising fascism inside this country, that we can show solidarity with those who have stood by our movements and our people. And so we like to put that challenge out in all of the movements that are represented, all of the movements, the social movements, the liberation movements, the global South movements, to stand with Cuba tonight and in its period, in its time of need. And I just wanted to put that out there. This is something that comes definitely from the heart of the political prisoner movement inside the United States, the labor movement inside the United States, and all others who are justice-minded. And I just want to say thank you for that time.
Thank you so much, sister, for ending our evening with those words. I think they're very important. And I will again say to people that you will be receiving a follow-up email, every single one who registered, because we have your emails. You'll be receiving a copy of the video, and you'll be receiving the key points from the chat. And this is, in some senses, it's a beginning, but in other senses, it's really part of a struggle that we have all been involved in, side by side with our Cuban brothers and sisters for a very long time. We will not let you down.
Yes,
We won't let you down.
we clearly stand with Cuba. And so, Ambassador, we want to thank you so much. We heard what you said. There are people who are if they want to do some projects, check in with the embassy. And as Mary said, we'll send out information to you so you can make connections with organizations so that we can maintain this pace, ratchet up a little bit so we all can stand with Cuba. Thank you very much.
Hasta la victoria siempre.
Good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador.